So Samke, thank you very much for taking time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we go into leadership, can you tell us a little bit more about your own background? Where did you grow up?
Thank you, Dr. Nick. I was born and raised in KwaZulu-Natal, and I was born in a very rural town of Umutu, and stayed in Matateni till I was about 7. I then moved to Gwelezane, again in rural KZN, till I was about 9. Moved to Pietermaritzburg, which was slightly bigger, till I was about 12, and then moved to Johannesburg, Cape Town, and back to Johannesburg, where I am currently based. The reason for moving around when I was younger is because I was raised by my gran, and she was a chief matron at the hospitals that she was working at, so she would get posted to where there was a need for her skills, and that's why I moved around so much. But basically, my foundational years were spent in rural KZN.
And tell us, what was your dream career as you grew up?
My dream career when I was growing up was to be a businesswoman. I remember when I would be playing with my cousins, I would always be counting money, paper money, and I called myself Mrs. Hadebe because for some reason, that to me sounded like a businesswoman's name. I don't know if there was a Mrs. Hadebe who owned a supermarket at the time, or a butchery, those were, or a salon. Those were the businesses that were thriving in the townships at the time. But I always imagined myself as Mrs. Hadebe, driving money and with a double cab.
And tell us, Samke, who inspired you in those early days?
Who inspired me in those early days, I think, would just be people that looked like they were wealthy. And by wealthy, I don't mean, just the big cars or the great outfits, but people with peace of mind. Because, my gran we'd have many visitors come through the home, and I'd always remember those ones that sort of came in with an air about them, an air of authority, came in with, not coming to complain or to ask for something, because a big part of the community would do that as well. But those that had their life together, and I wanted to be them. I didn't want to be the ones with the problems. I wanted to be the ones that were okay in life.
So tell us, where did you start your career?
My working career started at a mid-sized audit firm called Mazars. I had aspirations of becoming a chartered accountant at the time. After 18 months in audit, I realized it definitely was not for me. And I then changed and moved into banking, which happened in February 2010 when I joined Investec, where I was to stay for 7 years until February 2017, which is when I then started my own consultancy in financial literacy, education, and wellness.
Now today you're a wealth coach, you are prominent in the media, I believe you have your own show.
I have a slot. I do the business rap called Fresh Biz on the DJ Fresh Breakfast show on Metro FM. It is the first time in Metro FM's history actually that they have a business slot, and when the producer approached me to come and present it, he said he didn't want something that was like other business slots or other business news. It needed to be something that the typical young professional sitting in their hatchback in traffic on the way to work could understand. So that's how I think it's become quite popular, because it's something new, and in the way we do it as well, it's quite easy for the ordinary person to understand where and how it fits into their world.
And I believe you are a brand SA ambassador.
Yes, this year, 2018, I was appointed by Brand SA to be a Play Your Part ambassador in the field of business and entrepreneurship, and specifically entrepreneurship for women. So I get involved in their activities and initiatives that develop entrepreneurship and ease of doing business for women, and not just South African women, but women across the world wanting to do business in South Africa as well.
Now, you were recently voted one of the top 100 most influential people of African descent.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this prestigious award?
So that honor was awarded by the MyPad Foundation, which is a United Nations endorsed civil society organization that supports the decade of people of African descent as put together by the UN, and that decade is from 2015 to 2024. So they recognize people of African descent living everywhere across the globe, and they don't necessarily have to be black in terms of race. So Charlize Theron, for instance, is one of the honorees for 2018. Because she was born in South Africa, she's of African descent, and she's doing big things across the globe. So we get into 100 are chosen every year. You have to have been 40, maximum age of 40 in 2015, and you either are a trailblazer in politics and governance, or business and entrepreneurship, or humanitarian activities, or media and culture. So I was awarded for, or recognized for, my work in business and entrepreneurship, specifically financial literacy education in African women.
Now, Samke, tell us, looking back over your life and your career, was there a turning point where things could have gone different?
Most definitely. My turning point actually wasn't a career turning point, but it was a personal turning point that then changed my outlook on my purpose in life, which then led to the birth of my entrepreneurial endeavors. So when I went through my divorce, I had been very materially comfortable, and I'd also been a banker for about 5 years at that stage. So you would think that I know how to manage my finances, but what my divorce showed me and put me through is that there are sometimes elements that are outside of your control, and sometimes there are decisions that you make based on fear or because of your emotions, and there are many realities faced by African single women, which we have a proliferation of now, more female-headed households, that literacy alone cannot address. You need literacy, you need advocacy, you need a community, you need positive influence. You need someone that says, I know you're aspirational and I know you want more for yourself and your children and your family. So how do I help you get that in a financially sustainable way? I know you want to advance your career. So when we're talking about managing your finances, why aren't you teaching me how to grow my revenues instead of just teaching me how to cut my expenses? And that formed the basis of my MBA research dissertation, and then the results of that formed the basis for, and the rationale and the justification for, my consultancy.
So Samke, what is driving you today?
My why. So the reason I embarked on this journey is what drives me. When I know how desperate my situation was at the time, and how I wished there was someone that I could trust, that wouldn't judge me, that would understand me, that I could go to with uncomfortable truths like, I've entered into a relationship with an older man for material benefit, and they wouldn't judge me, and they'd say, okay, cool, this is where we are. How do we make sure that we put you in a position where you always have a choice and are not stuck in that relationship? Because the reality is many women are stuck in abusive relationships, whether physically, emotionally, verbally, and they can't leave because of the financial constraints in their life. So can you speak to someone who will say, I won't judge you, but let's work together on putting a plan to make sure you always have the choice to say, I want to stay or I want to go, and that's what keeps me motivated.
Now, Samke, let's talk about leadership. And I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
I think the future of leadership is definitely influence more than title. And when you look at the future of work, when you look at the gig economy where organizations are becoming flatter and flatter, and people are actually aspiring to own their businesses as opposed to have big titles, especially the millennial generation, I think the future of leadership is definitely around influence, around who takes action based on your recommendations or your word or your behavior. And you can see that leadership across the globe is being challenged, whether it's political leadership, business leadership, because people are saying, we want to make sure that you are living what you preach, and if you're not, we are going to take you to task for it. So it's about integrity, it's about ethics, it's about authenticity, and it's about who's actually listening when you speak, regardless of what title has been awarded to you, because the millennials don't respect titles. We respect behavior and integrity and truth.
Now, Samke, what is it that you've learned from your own journey that you consider most important for building future leaders?
What I've learned from my journey for building future leaders is that you must be willing to have truth spoken to you, and you must be willing to be challenged. So I recently lost my assistant, because of a breakdown in our relationship, and I think I was still applying a very traditional corporate mind to our relationship, whereas she's the new millennial that operates in the gig economy, where she's studying part-time and she does works as my assistant, but she also generates an income from graphic designing, etc. So she doesn't see me as a boss, she doesn't see me as someone at the top of the hierarchy, but rather as one of her clients as much as I'm her employer. So what it has taught me about the future of leadership is that it's very collaborative, and the way to get your followers, or the people you influence, or the people who you are leading, to follow you, to buy into you, and to execute on your strategy and your mandate, is to actually get their buy-in first and foremost. So the future of leadership will definitely rely on buy-in.
Now, Samke, when you speak to aspiring leaders, what is it you tell them they should focus on for future-proofing their career?
Personal branding more than anything else. I tell them that there needs to be a consistent messaging between what they put out on social media, what their values and beliefs are, who they are in the nightclub, and who they are when they go for a job interview. You need to be able to still stand true and proud of whatever action or tweet you've sent or remark you've made on any of the platforms you operate in. We no longer separate roles or duties or even personalities. We no longer say, I'm speaking in my personal capacity, I'm not speaking on behalf of the company. We recently had the racist incident with a husband of a brand manager at Nike putting out a racist video, and Nike was called into question, and called to answer for that action. So there's integration now. We see the whole, we see the holistic person, and we say that whatever your beliefs and your values are will ring true on all the platforms you find yourself in. So if you're going to future-proof yourself, and you're going to ensure that you establish longevity for yourself in the future world of work and business, then your personal brand must be consistent and must ring true to who you are and what you stand for.
Now, Samke, let's talk about technology. What would you say are the technologies or the tools of technology that you envisage future leaders need to embrace and need to apply?
Definitely social media, that's the easy one, because you can't decide whether or not you're on social media. What you can decide is whether or not you'll still be in business, because if you're not on social media, then I think your days in the digital economy are numbered, number one. But number two, I think that future leaders definitely need to start thinking big data and data integration, data integrity. There are many tools now that make it easier and that make it necessary for people that are self-employed, for people that operate in the gig economy, to actually then apply the same practices that a big organization would have in terms of measuring performance, measuring what the market is doing, measuring their demand, measuring whether their business model still holds, measuring what their customer is telling them. Because the benefit of being an entrepreneur is that you're small enough to be nimble and agile and always at the forefront of your customers' needs. Now, if you're not measuring what your customers' needs are, there's no ways you can respond to what those needs are. And then again, you're putting a finite life to your existence as an entrepreneur. So definitely social media and data analytics.
Now, Samke, you're very active on social media. I found you on LinkedIn. So can you tell us a little bit more about how did your social media presence evolve? What is your social media strategy, and how are you using social media in your own business?
My career was actually launched by social media. My career in entrepreneurship, let me rather say. And what I started doing after the findings of my MBA research paper is that I found that it is the a black South African female who has a tertiary education, is earning between 250,000 and 750,000 per annum, is in full-time employment, that is the most likely over-indebted. And to me, that then changed the face of the people that need financial literacy. It was no longer someone sitting in a hut, growing cabbages, but rather my friends, my sisters, my peers. And I started then sharing my banking expertise on my social media platforms as a way of saying, let's democratize private banking, let's democratize institutional information and institutional knowledge, let's make it available for those people that aren't private banking target market clients, because if we don't intervene at this stage, they may very well never reach that level. So it was around putting up social media posts, quizzes, questions, articles on financial literacy education, and some tips from a banker, some insights, some info that your banker wouldn't want you knowing, or your bank doesn't want you to know this. And it was very social media lingo, lots of hashtags, sensationalist, attention grabbing, and the traction from that led me to media. The traction from that had me receiving requests for corporate speaking, and it basically launched my business.
Now, when you speak to young leaders, what do you tell them? How should they navigate social media?
It ties in with personal branding to say that your social media should be a reflection of who you are and what you do, what you're good at, what your value add is. So I always tell people that my social media is my portfolio. So I think very carefully about what I post on there. And of course, it's not just work. It shows the holistic person. But I choose very carefully, not so that I'm inauthentic, but rather that I'm not making noise as well. So I don't really believe in posting my food, because although I eat, it's authentically me to eat, I don't see how it helps communicate who I am through what I eat. So I would rather post my outfits, because as a young woman in finance, which is a traditionally very conservative industry, now coming out wearing like lots of bling, lots of like makeup, and looking like a typical Barbie girl, which is my style, which is what I like. To me, it says you are allowed to be feminine and unapologetically feminine in a traditionally masculine industry and still be successful. So that's the messaging behind me posting my nails or my makeup or my outfit of the day, because it still ties into the broader message and my truth as a person in finance, and also selling the lifestyle. To say, just because I encourage you to save and invest and be responsible doesn't mean you need to look boring or to look like a saver. I mean, some people will say with pride that, no, I don't spend a lot of money on shopping. Honey, you don't need to tell us, we can see. Not all of us want to look like savers, want to look like people who are financially healthy, and that's very different.
Now, Samke, you've been inspiring many young professionals. Can you tell us maybe a success story or two of somebody that you mentored and that person took your advice to heart?
Okay, so one of the ladies that I mentored when I was still at Investec, and she was on the Tutuga bursary fund and was studying her accounting degree at Wits University. And I mentored her for 2 years, and in the first year, I was very disciplined. It was around making the meetings, giving her advice, I was still married, my life was pretty standard, and this was just, like a nice to have, that I'm a mentor, I'm giving back. And in that year, our relationship was good, but I don't think it was as impactful as in the second year, when I told her that, I can't see you as often. I've decided to leave my marriage. I'm struggling with my time. I'm struggling emotionally. I'm just trying to make it day to day. And it's in that year that she nominated me as one of the best mentors nationally. Well, she put me up for a mentorship award, and I came third nationally of all the Investec mentors. And she said, seeing me in action, seeing me deal with the challenges, not asking me how I've overcome the challenges or how one should overcome challenges, but seeing me actually overcome the challenges, seeing me actually get up every day when I didn't feel like it, seeing me actually, put on a good outfit, try and deliver at work when I just wanted to stay in bed, was the mentorship she needed. It was mentorship in action, and she took more from that than from just the theory or the how-to or the 7-step guide to getting your accounting degree. That to me was a success story, and it helped her because she didn't actually qualify to continue to honors in adverts, and it helped her say challenges do come, and we need to then say, okay, what are we working with? How do we adjust? Do we still continue on this path, or are there new opportunities that the alternative provides? And for her, that meant more than just, oh, you should do this. If you fail, okay, it's okay. Don't feel bad. You should try that. She saw me live it. And for me, that was a great success story and a great honor. The second story actually just came recently when I heard that some of the employees at Mintech, which I'm on the board of, had actually asked for my research paper 2 years ago when I made it available on LinkedIn, and they said because of the findings in that research paper, they're actually about a couple of months from launching a cooperative bank, because when they look at the needs of the Black African female and they look at what's available in terms of products and services, there's misalignment. So they wanted to start a cooperative bank where, saving is affordable, getting access to funding is on terms that make sense for the Black African female and her realities and her aspirations. So I was blown away by that. Like, are you joking? And so those two stories are one of many that really stand out for me in terms of the impact that one has on people. But what I can take away that is people are watching what you do, not necessarily what you say you do.
And Samke, are there any role models of leadership that you would recommend future leaders should study and learn from?
I'm actually very fascinated now with leaders of my own generation. So before, we definitely look at the older people. We'd throw out, the names, Kofi Annan, may he rest in peace, my Ellen Sirleaf Johnson, we throw out, your Judy Dlaminis. And now I'm actually looking at the leaders in my generation. People that are saying, where I am now, the challenges I'm faced with now, how am I winning in whatever arena I've chosen? So one of my good friends is, and I met her through, it started off as a business partnership, but now we're very good friends, Arise Ugu, who is a self-published author in Nigeria and gone on to change and turn a book into a TV show, into a movement, into a community, into a lifestyle. That is leadership for me. Someone who says, I had to self-publish. I had to find someone to print the books. I had to design the artwork, to check the quality, and to put that book, put that book in stores. Says to me that is leadership, and there's lessons to be learned there. We always try and look so far ahead when we should be looking at the people who are facing similar challenges and in the same environment as us, and say, how are you winning? How are you winning? Sometimes leadership comes from the people that are standing shoulder to shoulder with us and are staying afloat in very challenging environments, and we can look to them. Of course, there's lessons to be learned from the older generation and the people that have gone on before us, but there's also lessons to be learned from the people that are facing the same challenges we do day to day.
Now tell us, Samke, how can our listeners connect with you, and where can they follow you?
Definitely on social media. On Twitter and Instagram, my handle is @justsamke.com. And on Facebook and LinkedIn, it's Samke Mhlongo. And you may also then pop me a mail if you like on hello@tncwealth.com. And TNC is for the next chapter, wealth like money.com.
Now, last but not least, Samke, is there one piece of advice that you would really like to convey to future leaders that they should implement in their own leadership?
Yes, my biggest piece of advice is that we shouldn't think of the world of work in the same way we grew up with it being. So I encourage people to see their employers as their clients. I encourage people to take primary custody of their financial well-being and outlook. I encourage people to consider themselves as their biggest assets. So how do you develop asset you? Is it through education, personal development, branding, networks, participating in the gig economy where you can get more return for your hours, philanthropic activities, what rings true to you. And that is the piece of advice to say, see yourself as your biggest asset and see the world of work as an environment in which everyone is your client as opposed to you looking for employment.
Well, Samke, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership. And thank you for being an inspiration. I mean, you clearly are standing out on social media, and you clearly are future-proofing the African woman in so many ways. So thank you so much.
I'd like to think so. Thank you, Dr. Nick.